Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Mazza on Mets. I'm your host, Evan Mazza, here where we talk all things New York Mets. We got a lot to get into today on the show as the New York Mets got swept by the Tampa Bay Rays in a series where they did not do anything well, did not pitch well, did not hit well, did not play defense well. As Keith Hernandez would say, bad fundies. Kevin Cash did a much better job than Carlos Mendoza did. It's the first time all season long that the New York Mets got swept in a series. And, hey, if you were to tell a Met fan or anybody this year or me that the New York Mets would not get swept until the middle of June, from June, pretty much till Father's Day weekend, yeah, you would take that, right? You would kind of be like, yeah, hey, I'll take that, sure, because it happens. And it happened for the Mets this weekend as they just got completely outplayed by the Tampa Bay Rays and played their worst series of the season. It's not all we're going to talk about today on the show. We'll obviously recap the rest of the Rays series. We'll also talk about Kodai Senga. His injury was revealed over the weekend, how much time he's going to miss. We'll talk about the starting pitching. We'll talk about the bullpen. We'll talk about Montez and Sean Manaea and how they're doing with their rehab starts as they look to come back. And obviously, with the injuries to Kodai Senga, they need Montez and Manaea back pretty quickly now. We'll also preview their upcoming big series with the Atlanta Braves starting tomorrow night, and obviously coming off this sweep that they had from Tampa Bay Rays, this series now becomes just a little bit more important for them just to get back on track, and especially when you face a division rival who are now lining up their best pitchers from Sale to Schwellenbach. They are lining up their best pitchers to face you. So again, we'll preview the Braves series when we get there, and we'll talk about the big blockbuster trade that happened yesterday around Major League Baseball as Rafael Devers, fresh off the Red Sox sweeping the Yankees over the weekend, is on the move to the Bay Area in San Francisco. So we'll get into that. But to begin the show, we have to talk about, of course, the Mets getting swept by the Tampa Bay Rays in the series again. They did not play that well. That was their worst series of the season. And it all began on Friday. Didn't start out that way. Did not start out that way for the Mets on Friday, where the New York Mets were up 5-1 in this game after 5 innings. They looked good. Clay Holmes started this game. He was pitching well. He was doing all right. He was cruising, and you thought, okay, this is going to be how this is usually how the Mets win games. Their starting pitching is really good for about 6 innings, seven if you're lucky. The offense does not a lot, or sometimes a lot, but they do enough to win the game. They'll score five or so runs to win the game. They hand it off the bullpen to take over, and they win the game. Well, Clay Holmes, after 5 innings, and the Mets were up 5-1, was taken out of the game by Carlos. Carlos Mendoza decided to take out Clay Holmes. And Carlos Mendoza's reasoning for this was because the start that Holmes had in Colorado apparently took a lot out of him. Now I will defend Mendoza on this, and I will defend Holmes on this. It's understandable because Colorado's a tough place to pitch. Clay Holmes had never started a game in Colorado before. We saw with Kodai Senga. Now he had to adjust, but the difference with Kodai Senga is that Kodai is a career starter. Clay Holmes is not a career starter, of course, with this being his first year as a starting pitcher. Apparently, you have to adjust to pitching in Colorado, the altitude and everything like that. Then you have to come back to pitch another game at Citi Field. So it was a pretty tough adjustment for Clay Holmes. I can see why it was. Um, Having said that, the Mets had Carlos Mendoza made the decision to take Clay Holmes out of the game after 5 innings and about 70 something pitches, uh, and took him out of the game for another interesting move was Paul Blackburn. Paul Blackburn comes into the game in the top of the sixth. Now remember, Paul Blackburn is now going to start Wednesday's game against the Atlanta Braves for Kodai Senga, who is now hurt. So I guess the reason for Mendoza was to get Blackburn some reps before he would go pitch on Wednesday, but I didn't agree with it, so he doesn't have to go on, several days rest. So I guess by that reasoning, I understand. But yeah, you never know with bullpen outings. Sometimes it goes longer than expected. Sometimes he doesn't have it. And especially for someone like Paul Blackburn, he's never really been through the bullpen before. He's a career starter. He's adjusting to the bullpen. So I didn't I understood what Mendoza was trying to do, but I didn't agree with it. And unfortunately for Blackburn, he struggled against the Rays just like he did in Colorado against the Rockies, coming out of the bullpen after Tyler McGill. He struggles there, gives up some hits. I think he only got one out, a couple runs score. It's 5-3. or 5-4. Max Kranick comes in relief of him. He struggles yet again. He gives up the lead. And before you know it, a 5-1 Mets advantage becomes 7-5 Tampa Bay Rays in 1 inning. So it's not the biggest reason why they lost, actually. The biggest reason why they lost was the offense, but this played a huge role in why they lost this game. The mismanaged Clay Holmes having to come out of the game, not putting in Paul Blackburn, even though probably wasn't the best idea, considering A, he's not really typically a reliever, and B, he's starting on Wednesday for an injured Kodai Senga who had just gotten hurt the day before. So again, not very questionable moves there by Carlos Mendoza. Not the Clay Holmes decision, but questionable in terms of putting in Paul Blackburn instead of somebody else. I mean, Huascar Brazoban was warming up earlier in the bottom of the fifth, but I guess because it became a 4-run lead instead of a 2 or 3-run lead, they decided to put in Blackburn. But Brazoban was there. He could have pitched the sixth and the seventh, and then you hand things off to Garrett and Diaz and so on and so forth. But he decided to go with Blackburn, and unfortunately didn't pay off for Mendoza. And Kranick unfortunately continued his struggles. But again, not the biggest reason why they lost on Friday night. The biggest reason why they lost is that the offense went 2 for 16 with runners in scoring position. And again, it is the most common theme, the most common thing with this team. It has constantly been a thing. They don't score with runners in scoring position. It is the biggest problem, the biggest common theme with this team. It is the one thing, in my opinion, that will hold them back from going deep into October. The one thing that will hold them back is their struggles with runners and scoring position, especially against the good baseball teams. And the Rays are a good baseball. Now, again, the Mets have done well against good baseball teams this year. The Mets have done well against good baseball teams this year. Aside from the New York Yankees and now Tampa Bay Rays, they have done pretty well against teams above 500 this year, especially the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Cubs and but you can't do this against the good teams every time because come October, they will beat you. The Mets went 2 for 16 on Friday night with runners in scoring position. I know they were coming off a 6-game winning streak, and I know, I know they were coming off a 6-game winning streak. I know hey, a loss is going to happen here or there. You're not going to, you're not going to win 7, 8, 9 in a row all the time. It's tough. Wins, it's tough. They had just come off winning 6 in a row. So, obviously a bad day was, obviously, but, but you can't go 2 for 16 with runners in scoring position. Can't go 2 for 16 and expect to win a baseball game. And they didn't, and they did. So they've dropped this game 7-5 in a game they're up 5-1. And we had the Saturday's game. Tyler McGill struggles yet again. And again, it's the consistency. In Colorado, he was great for 4 innings. He was phenomenal through 4 no-hit innings. And then the 5th inning, inconsistencies hit, lost command, lost control, and he was only in after 5. Tonight, on Saturday against Tampa, for 2 innings, he looked great. And then the 3rd and the 4th inning happened and things went awry. And the 4th inning, he lost complete control. 4th inning, command was out, wild pitch. He made an error on a bunt. Completely lost the ball on the throwing a Pete Alonso. Just completely out of it in the 4th inning. Was not there at all. Just lost control of his stuff. And this is what really, this is what really, bites you about Tyler McGill. I've said it before. His stuff is so good, and I love his fastball, but it's the command, it's the control. It's what separates, it's what keeps him from being a 5th starter to a 3 starter. Maybe even a 2. It's what keeps him from just primarily being a five or a six guy in a rotation. Command and the control. If he ever figured that out, boy, he could be a really good three, maybe even a two. If he could ever figure that out. But it's been years now. And he is what he is. Tyler McGill is Tyler McGill. He's a fifth or sixth guy in a rotation. He's got when his stuff is on, he's really good. But there's a lot of times where the stuff isn't there. And he has an inning where it just doesn't go well for him at all. And that's what happened in this game. That's what happened in this game. And it cost the Mets the game. And this is common thing with Tyler McGill. Again, common thing right there. And they end up losing the game 8-4. He's got to find command and he's got to find control. And they need him again. Again, they need him because of Kodai's injury. They need him again because of Kodai's injury. So they need him. And they need him to be what he was in April. That's been the thing. He has great Aprils and then May, June or so struggles. He was great, so he was pretty good in August and September of last year, though. If only he could ever get any command, if only he could get any command or control of his stuff, he would be a dang good pitcher. He would be a darn good pitcher for this rotation. But it just doesn't happen. And you know, if he could only do that, he could be really good. But it's not there. The consistency isn't there. The consistency isn't there. McGill, I think, could be good in a bullpen role, but again, we'll see. I don't know what Tyler McGill's role is when Manaea, Montaz, and Senga are all back. I don't know what his role is on this team. I don't know what his role is on this team when those three guys are back. I don't know. He could be a bullpen arm, but you have to hope he does well out of the bullpen. But when Manaea is healthy, Senga's healthy, Montez is healthy, combine it with Canning, we'll get to Canning, combine it with him and Peterson and Holmes, I don't know what his role is. I don't know what his role is on this team. What's Tyler, and again, it's McGill, I think, could be a darn good starter for this team if he could just get his command good. If he could just get his command going, I think he could be a darn good starter. I like his talent, I like his potential, but the command and the inconsistencies, but the command and the consistency isn't there. If he can only snap out of it, if he could only snap out of it and get his command, if he can only snap out and get his command in order, man, he could be a darn good pitcher. But for what he is now, he's a 5 or a 6, and that's about it. And you hope that he can give you 5, but you don't know. Like I said, Colorado, 4 innings, it looked great. Then the 5th, not so much. Tampa Bay, 2 innings, it looked great. And then third and the 4th, especially the 4th, not so much. So the Mets ended up losing the game 8-4. And then yesterday on Sunday, again, bad starting pitching, Griffin Canning. I think, pitchers again go through bad spots. It happens. But considering Canning's history and Canning's career to this point, I think it is maybe a little bit fair to kind of wonder, is this now the true Griffin Canning? Canning struggled again for the 3rd time in 4 starts against the Tampa Bay Rays on Sunday. The walks were up. He walked 5 guys, 6 earned runs. He only went 4 1/3. And in his last 3 out of 4 outings now against the White Sox, the Nationals, and now the Rays, he has walked 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 guys, and he's given up 10, 13 earned runs. 13 earned runs in his last 3, and in 3 of the last 4 outings, and the walks are up 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 walks and 13 earned runs allowed in three of his last four starts against the Nationals, the White Sox, and now the Rays. And in the middle of all that, by the way, is a great start against the Los Angeles Dodgers. 6 innings, 3 hits, no runs, 7 strikeouts. So in the middle of all that is a fantastic outing against the best team in all of baseball. But in three of the last four outings now, he's really struggled. And again, now you have to wonder, is the Griffin Canning that we've known throughout his career, is this the guy now that's going to show up now? And again, Mets need Griffin Canning now. The Mets need Griffin Canning. They need him now because of Senga's injury. They need him to get back to what he was doing before. Because pitchers hit rough patches in their seasons. It's a long year. They're not going to be great all year. But because it is Griffin Canning, and he was never this good at all in his entire career. This is a guy with a 5+ ERA last year, career 4+ in his career. He had never ever ever, he had never ever ever pitched like that, in his career up until this point this season. So now with his recent struggles, you have to wonder, you know, is the real Griffin Canning coming here? Is the real Griffin Canning now showed up here? I think the Mets now have to. The Mets and others have to wonder that now. After three of his last four. Again, it's only again he could change that. He could change that in his next outing against the Philadelphia Phillies, but it is the Phillies in Philadelphia. Tough task. But again, he's pitched well against Chicago. He's pitched well against the Dodgers. He's pitched well against the Yankees. You know, but I think this next start upcoming for Griffin Canning, I believe it'll be this weekend against the Phillies. Yeah, of course it'll be this weekend against the Phillies. I think this is a huge start for him. I think he needs to go out there in Philly and show the Mets, hey, I'm good. I'm good, and I can be reliable heading into the final 3 months of the season, into the second half. I think this is a big start for him coming up this weekend. I think he really needs to show the Mets, you know, I think he needs to show the Mets that put the train back on the tracks here. But Sunday, not a good outing for him. Mets get shut out 9-0. They go 0-for-7 with runners in scoring position. I think the Tampa and the Rays complete the sweep of the Mets. I think the Rays, I think the Rays just again, I think the Rays just outplayed the Mets in every order. I think they just outclassed them in every facet of the game. Um, and I think what you saw was what the Mets look like when the starting pitching isn't good. Clay Holmes is good, obviously Holmes is good. But when the pitching isn't there, when the bullpen isn't there, when the starting pitching isn't there, and the offense continues to show their biggest weakness, which is that they don't score a run in scoring position, you see what could happen with this team, and that they lose 8-4, they lose 9-0. They lose a game 7-5 where they were 0-for-16 or 2-for-16 run scoring position. The Mets this weekend went 4-for-27 with runners in scoring position. The pitching allowed 20 earned runs. 20. The pitching allowed 20 earned runs in 3 games. And the offense went 4-for-27 with runners in scoring position in this whole series, including the 2-for-16 on Friday night. They went 2-for-4 on Saturday and 0-for-7 yesterday. And here's another stat for you. After the Mets went up 5-1 against the Rays on Friday, the Mets were outscored 23-4. After the Mets went up 5-1 on Friday, they were outscored 23-4. The Rays scored 6 runs after that on Friday. They scored 8 runs on Saturday. And then they scored 9 on Sunday. 23 runs. 23-4 after they're up 5-1. 23-4, 20 earned runs allowed in the pitching, 4-for-27 with runners in scoring position. And they made a lot of defensive miscues, some miscommunications. There was a bunt that Beatty thought was going to be picked up by Griffin Canning, but they didn't. They weren't on the same page, and ended up being a base hit. Like I said, there was McGill's couple of errors. Again, just not a very clean series from this team. Not very, could not hit runners in scoring position. Um, Only scored 4 runs after scoring 5 runs on Friday. Um, the rest of the way, the rest of the series. Um, 20 earned runs allowed. Just not a very clean series. Not a very good series. Not a very clean series. So, but again, it is baseball. To look at the positives here, But again, to look at the positives, this was, this is a team that had won 6 in a row. They were 21 games over 500. I know a lot of Met fans are now saying, "Oh my goodness, we lost 3 games to the Phillies." Hey, the Phillies are good. The Mets came in 5.5 on Friday night, 2.5 now entering today, and the Phillies actually play the Marlins later tonight. So the Phillies could be 2 games behind the Mets at the end of the day, or the Mets could be 3 games ahead of the Phillies at the end of the day. Sandy Alcantara goes for the Marlins tonight. So hey, hopefully, hey, if you're the Mets, you hope Sandy Alcantara. If you're a Mets fan, you hope Sandy Alcantara can be the Sandy Alcantara role, but he's really struggled this year, over 70 ERA. Um, so we'll see what happens. So we'll see what happens tonight with the Marlins and the Phillies. Um, so anyway, the Marlins and the Phillies are now the Marlins and the Phillies play tonight. Um, so we'll see what happens. But I don't think. But again, you knew this would be to those Met fans who are going, "Oh my gosh, we were 5.5, 5.5 back, 5.5 up. Now we're 2.5 up." I mean, you knew this was going to be a division race. Don't be Sal Licata. Don't be Sal Licata and say, "Oh, the division's over. The Mets have won it." Don't be Sal Licata. Don't be that guy. Don't think just because you have a 5.5 game lead in the middle of June that you think that the division's all sealed. No, 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 no. Don't ever think that. Don't be Sal Licata. Don't ever think that. The division is never, ever over until it's over. And this is the National League East. The Mets are going to be in it. The Phillies are going to be in it. And again, I still think the Braves will be in it. I still think the Braves will be in it. This is going to be a race. This is going to be a tough division race. Just, just, just going to tell you, because the Mets will not win this. No team in this division will win this thing by June, July, August. This will be won heading into September. Once we get to late September, that's when this thing will be won. But for all the fans going, "Oh my goodness, we're 5.5. What the heck?" Slow down. Slow down. Pause. This division is going to come down to the wire. This division is going to come down to the last date, to the final month of September. Slow down. This division is coming down to September. This division is coming down to September. It's going to come down to September. We knew this. We knew this coming in. This was always going to be a race. So the only thing I can say is enjoy it. The only thing I can say is just enjoy it. This is baseball. It's a division race. Just enjoy it and hope the Mets come out on top. On the other hand, I don't care if the Mets win the National League East. I just want them in the playoffs. Division, wild card, just get in. Get in the playoffs and see what happens. Because I think the Mets, if they get in the playoffs, can win any series. So, but it'd be nice to win the division, sure. Mets haven't won the division in a decade. Hard to believe it now. It's been 10 years since the Mets last won the division. But anyway. Um, but anyway, don't fret. It's the National League East. It's a division race. So enjoy it. And hey, big series coming up this weekend now. Now with the lead from 5.5 now to 2.5. Big weekend series coming up. Big weekend series coming up. But first, they play the Braves Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll get to that. So to put the Mets and the Rays series again. Mets back to the Mets and the Rays series again. The Mets you're outplayed. It happens. It happens. The only thing that you can say that you were very disappointed in was the pitching. It was the pitching. The pitching did not play well, and you saw what could happen when the pitching isn't good, along with the offense not hitting. You saw what could happen. So, you saw what could happen when the pitching isn't good and the offense isn't good. Or when the offense continues its struggles around scoring position and the pitching isn't there to help it out. The The Mets now have to take this day off that they're on today, kind of, you know, move on from the series, move on from the series and continue on into the next series and continue on into this big road trip that they're going on now and a big stretch of games. Braves, Phillies, Braves, Pirates on the road, the Brewers, the Yankees. Big stretches of series coming up for the Mets. So you got to put this one, move forward from it, move on from it, and just continue on with your season. And and just pick your and just continue on and just continue on with your season. That's all. Just continue on. Just continue on. That's all. Just continue on with your season. So it was a bad series. They didn't play well. Hey, what can you do? So first series sweep of the season now, and it took till mid-June. So again, that's if you were to tell anybody that it would be till their middle of June, late June, or middle of June, they get swept for the first time, I think you'd take it. You know, so uh, so after the in the middle of the series with the Rays, um, Kodai Senga's injury got revealed. It's a low-grade hamstring strain. He'll be out for looks like 2 to 4 weeks. So they did get some relatively good news on Senga's injury. They did get some relatively good news. So he should be back sometime after the All-Star break, it looks like. So at least that's good. He'll be back for the stretch run. He'll be back for late July, excuse me, mid to late July, maybe even early August. So he'll be back. So if things go well with his rehab and his recovery from the hamstring strain, again, hamstrings are very tricky. Hamstrings are very tricky. So, but 2 to 4 weeks should be all right. And he'll be back and ready to go. So it looks like the Mets avoided, and Senga, most importantly, avoided a big injury. And that's good for Senga. It's great for the Mets, but it's also great for Senga because the last thing he needed was another big injury that would cost him more time. He already missed virtually all of last year. He already missed virtually all of last year. If you want to count the one start, and the couple of playoff starts. If you want to count the one start and if you want to count the one start, a couple of playoff starts, but he missed virtually all of last year. So it's a good thing for Senga. Great for the Mets, but an even better thing for Senga. And he should be back in the next 2 to 4 weeks. On the other hand, Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas, again, that leaves to their importance to come back with Senga's injury. Now the Mets need those two back more than ever. And with Frankie Montas, it looked like Carlos Mendoza is a little more cautious and more concerned with Frankie Montas because they want to give him a couple of more rehab starts because Montez's rehab starts have been relatively poor and he has struggled in these rehab starts. And again, that's not something if you're the Mets you want to see. If you're a fan, and yeah, you need Montez to pitch a little bit better in rehab. So it looks like he's going to get about 2 more rehab starts before he finally makes his Mets debut this season. And again, that's obviously a little disappointing. And I think the Mets are disappointed. And Carlos Mendoza, talking to the media the other day, seemed a bit disappointed because you expected him back by now, as the Mets are into now mid-June, late June. You expected him back by now, and you definitely expected, his rehab starts to be a little bit better, and they haven't been. I know the only thing I can say, get Jeremy Hefner. Get him in the same building as Jeremy Hefner, and let's see Hefner work his magic. Let's see Hefner work on him a bit. So that's the only thing I can say. That's the only thing I can say. Just get him in the same room with Jeremy Hefner, and let's see what happens. But obviously, in all seriousness, they need him to be a little bit. In all seriousness, though, they need him to be better in the minor leagues to get a little more encouraged that he'll be better in the big leagues because they need him right now. He was a big signing in free agency, one of their big signings in free agency in the offseason. They need him. So, but the only thing I could say is again, get him in the same room as Jeremy Hefner and then see what happens. As far as Sean Manaea goes, Sean Manaea is now doing his rehab starts. In his third rehab start in Brooklyn, he allowed 4 runs just the other day. So again, again, Manaea's his final line in Brooklyn the other day in his rehab start. This was yesterday, two and a third, 5 hits, 4 runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, 1 home run on 56 pitches. That was in Brooklyn for the Cyclones. So again, not what you wanted if you're the Mets, not what you wanted if you're a Met fan who expects both of these guys to come back. So and pitch well for you. And again, the Mets need these two. The Mets need these. Now you trust if you're a Met fan. If you're a Met fan, you obviously trust Sean Manaea more than you trust Frankie Montez because Sean Manaea was a guy who was an ace for you last year. And he was great for you down the stretch, great for you in the second half, and he was a big reason why you made the playoffs. So you trust Manaea more than you trust Montez. So, but having said that, you need Manaea to be better than he was in Brooklyn last night, or yesterday. You need him to be better than he was in Brooklyn yesterday. So, look, they need them both. And now with Senga's injury, with him out for the time being, for at least the next couple of weeks, they need these two back more than ever. So the starting pitching, a few days ago seemed, on a super high. I tell you, this is baseball, 162, long season. Things can change just like that because it's 162. It's a long season, 6 to 7 months. It's a long 6 to 7 month season. A few days ago, the Mets starting pitching was riding high. David Peterson pitched a great shutout the start of the year. Kodai Senga for 6 innings was cruising. And then before you know it, things change. Senga gets hurt. Canning struggles yet again. McGill struggles yet again. Anaya and Montez are struggling in the minors in their rehab outings. So much can change in a few days, but that's the beauty of baseball. It could change one way, but it could also change another. It can change the other way around for the Mets in a few days, so we'll see. But right now, as we speak, right now, the Mets starting pitching is in a bit of a flux. It's in a bit of a flux now. Naya Montez, Mendoza doesn't seem happy with Montez's rehab assignments and how he's performing in the minors, which tells you the Mets are certainly not happy. If Mendoza ain't happy, then the Mets are not happy. Manaea struggled yesterday. Senga's hurt. Canning is struggling 3 of his last 4 innings. McGill continues to struggle. So now the starting pitching's in a bit of a flux. And you need and the Mets, more than ever, more than any team, aside from the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they're going through with their injuries. Hey, the Los Angeles Dodgers look at the Mets going, hey, look at us. We don't have any starting pitching right now. Our starting pitching is hurt. Most of our guys are hurt. But a team like the Dodgers are like, okay. But the Mets, they got to figure it out now. Starting pitchers in a bit of a flux. You need to figure it out. So, so that's it. They got to figure out their pitching. Their starting pitching is now in a bit of a flux, and they need to figure it out. And you need Montez back pitching well, and you need Montez back pitching well, and you need Sean Manaea back pitching well. So now you have to ask, will David Stearns look for the starting pitching market next month? And I think that's a key thing. I don't know who he'll get, but I think that's a key thing you have to look at now. If Montez is going to struggle, uh, when he comes back, and Senga is still bothered by injuries, or maybe he comes back and or maybe something, or maybe he's out longer. Again, right now we got good news out of Senga. 2 to 4 weeks, low grade hamstring strain, but again, hamstrings are tricky. Hamstrings are very tricky. Hamstrings are one of the trickiest injuries in sports. But you also combine that Griffin Canning's recent struggles and Tyler McGill's struggles. All of a sudden, the Mets now might need a starting pitcher. So you wonder if David Stearns is now working the phones and trying to see if he can get a deal done for a starting pitcher because you kind of need one. Or you think about the minors, Nolan McLean, Blake Tidwell, Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tong. Maybe the Mets decide to call up one of their young guys in the minor leagues and give them a chance. Tidwell obviously had a chance in St. Louis on a spot start. He struggled, but that was only one start. But they need some help now in starting pitching. They need some help. It's June, so they got time. But their starting pitching is now in a bit of a flux now, and it doesn't help that guys like Griffin Canning are struggling and McGill is struggling. So they need Canning, they need Senga back, they need Manaea Montez, especially Manaea back and pitching well. They need Canning to bounce back. And I think they need either McGill to bounce back or they need somebody from the outside, whether it's in the minors to come up and step up, or someone in a trade for David Stearns to work his mat to work the phones and get somebody. Who? I don't know. We'll find out, but they think they need a starting pitcher. And I think another thing they need, and I think you saw it over the weekend with Blackburn struggles, Max Kranick struggles, Ryan Stanek again struggling yesterday. So Blackburn, again, even though Blackburn's not really a reliever, he's a starter. And he talked about how it was a tough adjustment for him to go from the start to a bullpen. It is. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough for a starter to transition to the bullpen, and it's tough for a reliever to transition to a starting pitcher. It's always tough, you know. So it's always tough. But but when you look at Blackburn's recent struggles and Stanek's struggles and his inconsistencies all season long, and you look at Kranick's struggles, so all of a sudden, again, the Mets need a reliever or two. And that's been true ever since AJ Minter's injury. That's been true really ever since AJ Minter and Danny Young both suffered injuries. They need a reliever or two now in that bullpen. So Stearns has to get a starter. He has to get, and I think this weekend again. I don't think this is an overreaction. I don't think this part is an overreaction. I'm not going to overreact overall to the series against Tampa Bay, but I think the flaws that you saw over the weekend and is stuff that you've seen over the course of the season, because again, it has shown itself. It has shown itself. They've won games, but it has shown itself. They need another starter. I think they need a reliever or two in that bullpen now. And they need a hitter. Like I said, 4 for 27 run scoring position this weekend. How much longer can you keep trying to hope that this thing works for you? How much lineup stuff are you gonna? How much stuff in the lineup are you gonna mix up? How many players are you gonna play? Again, they need Mark Vientos back. They need Alvarez to hit. They need Torrens actually to start hitting more because he's struggling recently at the plate. They need Alonso really, Alonso, he was okay during this homestand, I guess. He had the big hit against Washington, but aside from that, I don't think he really had that great of a homestead this in the last 6 games, Pete Alonso. So they need Pete to kind of get, but again, the guy's been red hot. This guy's been great all year, so I think he'll be fine, obviously. But they need him to kind of get his back going again after he didn't really have a good homestead. They need Lindor to get going again. Now again, Lindor has his broken pinky toe that he's battling back from, so he does have that for him. But having said that, he didn't really have that great of a homestead, so he kind of has to. I think he has to get going. I think they said, I think he was 5 for his last 20 something, 5 for his last 20 something, I think, or 6 for his last 20 something. So they need Lindor to kind of get going again. But again, he's battling through the broken pinky toe. But it's that bottom of the order, It's Alvarez, it's Beatty and Mauricio, it's Acuna, it's Tyrone Taylor. They need those guys. You have Lindor, you have Soto, you have Alonso, you have Nimmo, you have McNeil, but you need those other guys in the bottom to step up. Tyrone Taylor, although is not an everyday center fielder. He's not every day. He's a great defender at center field, and he made an amazing play against the Nationals. But he's not an everyday center fielder. So they need another center fielder. They need a starting center fielder. And Siri, Obviously, it looks like he won't be back anytime soon. Jesse Winker is still working his way back from the oblique injury. So, and Mark Vientos is, I think, doing a rehab start tomorrow. So he's on his way back. So when Vientos gets back, they need him to hit. When, Marte too as well. I should include Marte in that. Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, Lindor, McNeil, and Marte. They've been good. They've been fine. But it's those six have been fine, especially Marte. And I know a lot of guys, I know a lot of people at the beginning of the season thought Marte wasn't very good anymore. But Marte has shown you this season, hey, he's still got some left in the tank. And the part-time DH thing, again, I was one of those people that said, not to go off topic, but I want to talk about Marte for just a quick second. I was one of those people that thought him DHing was a good idea because he didn't have to play defense anymore. What was hurting Marte was him playing defense and running around. That's what was causing the knees and the quads and the groin. Now he was obviously a part-time role, but mainly focus on just hitting the baseball. And Starling Marte, yeah, he's not going to hit you 20 or 25 home runs or 30 home runs like a regular DH, like a regular DH would, but guy can hit. So I do think so. Him as a DH is actually a good role for him. And he's showing you that this year, Starling Marte. So I was one of those guys that thought, hey, DHing Marte is not a bad idea. It's a pretty good idea. Pretty good idea. And I think he could do well there. And he's done well. So, I'm glad to see Marte do well this year because I've always been a fan of his. So, and I've always been a fan of Marte. So it's good to see him do well. But aside from those six, they need those other guys, the bottom of the order, to step up. They need Vientos back. They need Alvarez to really get going. They need Acuna to get going again. They need Mauricio to hit. They need Beatty to get back going again. They need Torrens to get back going again. So it's the bottom of the order and it's the depth in the bench. I do think this offense could use a center fielder, a starting center fielder, which puts Tyrone Taylor in a better position to be a rotational depth guy off the bench and play center field in the seventh, eighth, ninth innings and do what he does best, which is play great defense and do some sparse hitting, but most of all, play great defense, you know, and and play great defense, but they need another bat. So, and you need just anything to help this team with runners in scoring position because this team continues to struggle in this category. Continues to struggle with runners in scoring position. Like I said, 4 for 27 in this series. So they need another starter. They need at least, I think, 2 more relievers, and they need another bat. So I think that's what this series, I think that's what we've seen throughout the course of the season, but I think also this is what this series, again, I don't think it's an overreaction, but I think it's what this series taught the Mets as they played a good team like the Tampa Bay Rays, who played good, sound baseball. Well, most of the way, because on Friday, I wouldn't say the Rays played good, sound baseball. They made a lot of errors and mistakes, but the Mets still ended up losing that game. So I think that's what made, literally on Friday, the Rays did everything they could to give that game to the Mets, but the Mets just wouldn't take it. So, but overall, the Rays have been a good, sound baseball team, and I think they showed you. And I think I think this series showed you that the Mets need a couple of things. They may be a great baseball or a good baseball team. I don't think they're a great baseball team yet, but they may be a very good baseball team that's currently 18 or so games over 500. But they do have some things they need to retool. They need another starter, I think. They need 2 relievers, I think, in that bullpen, and I think they need at least 1 more bat. I think they need a legit starting center fielder out there. But that's not the only thing. They need Vientos to come back and hit the ball like he's capable of hitting the ball, and they need Alvarez to hit the ball like he's capable of hitting the ball. So as we head towards this week, the New York Mets will head to Atlanta starting tomorrow to play the Atlanta Braves. This is the first time all season where the Mets have played the Atlanta Braves. Kind of weird, but it is. On June 17th, the Mets will play the Braves for the first time, 7:15. David Peterson, off the heels of his fantastic start against the Washington Nationals, will line up and he'll face Spencer Schwellenbach, who, again, is 5-4 with a 3.11 ERA, and he's had some good years. And he's again, like I said, like I said earlier, the Atlanta Braves are lining up their best pitchers for this series. The Braves, they need this series. They need this series. They need this series right now. The Braves. So they're lining up their best. They will then throw Chris Sale on Wednesday night, 7:15 p.m. They will throw Chris Sale on Wednesday against still Paul Blackburn, even though Blackburn pitched on Friday and out of relief. But they will throw Chris Sale at the Mets on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I think they throw Strider. Is it Strider on Thursday? Yes, it is against Clay Holmes. So, and that's a 7:15 game again. So this will be a tough series for the Mets. This is a series the Braves have to have, and they're playing like it. They're going to throw their best at you. Schwellenbach, Sale, and Strider. And the Mets will throw Peterson, Blackburn, and Holmes. So this will be a tough battle. This will be a tough series. Braves need it. And the Mets kind of need it now because they're coming off a sweep against the Rays and where they play, like I said, their worst series of the season. Yeah. The Braves need this series desperately. The Braves really need this series, but the Mets kind of need this series. So you got two teams, two division rivals. First time they've met all year long. First time they've met since game 161 last year, 161 and 162, but especially 161 of last year. This rivalry has certainly picked up over the last couple of years of what happened in 2022 and what happened last year. This rivalry has certainly picked up. I wouldn't say it's the way it was in the mid to late 90s, early mid 2000s. I don't know if it's that level yet, of course not, but it's picked up now over the last couple of years. The Braves are throwing their best pitchers. The Mets need to get back on track. This will be a big, interesting series for the Mets, and the Mets need it too because they play the Phillies this weekend, and we mentioned it before, the Phillies play the Miami Marlins this week. So combine it all, the Phillies could be in a very good spot heading into the weekend don't if the Mets uh, don't beat Atlanta this week. So, and that could set things up for a very interesting, very, very big weekend series against the Phillies. But the Mets need to go out there and they need to play their best baseball against a team that is desperate for a series win and desperate for some wins. And they're throwing their best. They're throwing their best out there. So the Mets need to be ready to go, ready to be prepared, ready to move on and move forward and ready to move on and move forward, from a bad Rays series, ready to move on from a bad Rays series and move forward with their season. So they need to do that. So they need to do that and they need to get ready because the Braves are hungry and they're ready to try to get this series and get some momentum. But the Mets have to move forward after a bad weekend. But if they don't, not only could this be a long series against the Braves, it could be a long weekend upcoming against the Phillies. So we'll see what happens. But the Mets need to come back tomorrow night after this off day today and get back at it. That's all they can do. So again, long season, but that's all they can do. Just keep going, move forward, and get back at it. Should be a very fun, interesting weekend weekend for the Mets as they face both the Braves and the Phillies. And next week they play the Braves again at home. So this is a good test for the Mets. Very good test. Regardless of everything, it's a very good test. You get your two biggest National League Eastern Division rivals back to back to back. Braves this week, the Braves Tuesday through Thursday, the Phillies Friday through Sunday, and then the Braves next week, I believe Tuesday through Thursday as well. So big test for the Mets as they come off the series sweep against the Rays. Again, test their mettle, test their battle. Let's see. Hey, adversity for the Mets. Adversity. They haven't been through much adversity this season, but a little bit of adversity. Coming off your worst series of the season. Now you face your division rivals, your main two division rivals back to back to back. Braves twice, Phillies once. And that's the weekend Philly series will be very big considering how close they are in the division. So this is the Mets' chance to go through some adversity, move on from the Rays series and move forward. You know, so we'll see what they do. Should be a very interesting week for the Mets. Off topic for the Mets, to go a bit off topic and go around Major League Baseball. Brought it up at the top of the show. The Boston Red Sox. Let me get a drink. It's just water, folks. Don't worry. Let me get a sip of water first before we talk about this. The Boston Red Sox did it again. They traded one of their biggest stars to the West Coast, just like they did with Mookie Betts, just like they let Alexander Bogaerts, they didn't trade him, but just like they let Alexander Bogaerts leave in free agency to the San Diego Padres, they did it again. They dealt Rafael Devers only hours after they swept their biggest rivals, the New York Yankees. Not only swept the Yankees, but have won 5 in a row against the Yankees. In the series last weekend against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, the Yankees beat the Red Sox on the first game of the series, but then the Red Sox came right back and won the next two to take 2 out of 3 at Yankee Stadium. And then they swept the Yankees at Fenway Park just this past weekend. So the Red Sox are riding high. They're red hot. They're only a half game behind the third wild card spot. So you think, hey, things are going well in Beantown. Things are going well in Boston. Their season is they're game over 500 now. They've now beaten their main rival 5 in a row. They've won 2 out of 3 against them. They've now swept them. They're a half game behind now. Hey, things are going well for the Red Sox. You know, after so much turmoil and inconsistencies and the Devers stuff. But the Devers stuff, mere hours after they swept the Yankees, finally decided to trade him. The Devers stuff, they said, we're trading you. They traded him to the San Francisco Giants. And Jordan Hicks was acquired. Kyle Harrison was acquired from the San Francisco Giants. Let's recap the trade here, folks. Because this was the San Francisco Giants were actually minutes away from playing their biggest rival, the Los Angeles Dodgers, when this trade was made. It was literally in the middle of baseball, Sunday night baseball countdown on ESPN. It was then the news was reported throughout baseball, like right before the Giants and Dodgers took the field. It was and before you know it, the San Francisco Giants got a new teammate, right? And one of the best hitters in all of baseball, right before they took the field. The Red Sox acquired Kyle Harrison in the trade, Jordan Hicks in the trade, James Tibbs, prospect from the Giants in the trade. They also acquired another prospect in the trade. The Red Sox, this is all from Jeff Passan and, of course, Robert Murray. Robert Murray of Fansided was the first to report the story. Jeff Passan had more on the story of ESPN. He also said the Red Sox will not send any money to cover the remaining $250 million plus in Devers' contract. So the San Francisco Giants are taking in the entire Rafael Devers contract. And for the Red Sox, we'll start with the Giants. We'll start with the Red Sox. For the Red Sox, you figured there had to be some sort of trade coming, right? You know, the relationship had gotten messy with them. And the Red Sox, the Red Sox started this. Look, I know everyone got on Devers' case, but the Red Sox started this. You know, when the Red Sox went up to Devers at spring training and said, yeah, dude, we don't think you're good enough at third base anymore. We're paying you a lot of money, but we don't think you're good enough to play third base anymore. So you're going to DH. You're our new designated hitter. You're our millions and millions of dollar designated hitter now. And Devers was like, okay, I'd rather play third base and play position, but I don't like that, but I'll play fine. I'll be your DH. And then Tristan Casas suffers an injury, and he's out for the season. The Red Sox starting first baseman. He's out for the rest of the season. And then the Red Sox, who in spring training told Rafael Devers, hey, by the way, you don't need your glove anymore this year, so just keep your bat and hit. are now saying that are now knocking on Devers' door and saying, "Oh, can you get your glove and play first base?" By the way, I know we told you, hey, you don't need your glove anymore. You just need to hit, you know. And now they're telling him, "Oh, by the way, you need your glove now." And Rafael Devers disagreed with it or not, and I know he took some flack for it. He took some flack for it, and I didn't like it either in parts, you know. But I understood where Devers is coming from when he said, "No, you told me I didn't need my glove this year. You told me I didn't need my glove. You specifically told me I was not good enough to play the field, and I should just bat and hit and be the DH. You told me I'm going to bat and DH this year. You told me I'm going to bat. I'm going to be a hitter and DH this year. That's what you told me. That is what you told me. Now you're telling me to go back and play the field? No, no, I'm not doing that. No, never. I'm not doing that. I'm hitting. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not going back on the field." And Rafi Devers, to his point of view, is right. Why should he go back on the field? Why should he play? Why should he go back on the field? You told him he's just going to hit this year. Why should he go back and play the field? But to the Red Sox point is that where the Red Sox are right is, Cass is out now for the year. We need a first baseman now. So I think for Devers, yeah, maybe you're in the right by saying that, but what you probably should have done was, be a good teammate and show the locker room and the clubhouse that you will go out there, and especially when you are the captain, you are the face of the, maybe not the captain, but you are the face of the franchise. Rafael Devers in this current era of Boston Red Sox baseball is the face of the Red Sox. He is the face, and he's been the face for a while. So, as the face of the Red Sox and as the guy that we all think about when we think of the current Boston Red Sox, you probably should just go out there and play first base, even though you're in the right when you say, "No, I'm hitting," because you told me all I have to do is hit this year. He is in the right in that perspective, but on the other hand, with your status and you being, you know, you being the face of the Red Sox, you know, and you being the face of the Red Sox, maybe you should just go out there and play first. You know, just go out there and do it. It would don't do it for yourself. Don't do it for the Red Sox. Do it for your teammates. You know, because then your teammates will say, "Hey, we know you don't like doing this, but we appreciate you going out." Jaron Duran would appreciate that. Marcelo Meyer would appreciate that. Um, Christian Campbell would appreciate that. Trevor Story would appreciate that. You know, these guys would appreciate that. So don't do it for yourself. Don't do it for the Red Sox. Do it for your teammates. Show you're a good teammate. Even though you're in the right, you are right and have a point when you tell the Red Sox, "You told me to hit, I'm hitting. You told me to DH this year. You took me out of third base. You said I'd be DHing. You know, you know, so I'm DHing." You know, he is in the right, but it would be good to see your teammates or your teammates to see that. That's all. And I think, Roman Anthony, who just recently got called up, I think that would have been a good thing for him to see when he would have gotten called up to Boston, when he would have gotten called up to Boston. I think that would have been good for him to see, you know, but you didn't do that. And that caused, he met with John Henry, the owner of the team. I think that just caused, you knew a trade, you knew that the trade, right? You knew that the Red Sox were going to look for a trade. And that's what happened. And the San Francisco Giants, who are missing Matt Chapman and who need a big bat in that lineup, and oh, by the way, are playing really good baseball, and are only 2 games back of the Dodgers, and they're chasing the Dodgers for the National League West Division Championship. And oh yeah, they have a President of baseball operations and GM Buster Posey, who is looking for a winner, who is and who has won, who wants to win, is looking for a big move, and he wants to win for the Giants. And he wants to win for the Giants. You know, and that's what he did. He went out and got Rafael Devers, and they're gonna figure it out when they get there. You know, they'll figure it out when Matt Chapman gets back. They'll figure it out. They don't care because Rafael Devers is now a San Francisco Giant, one of the best, not just left-handed hitters. Yeah, yeah. Not just one of the best left-handed hitters in all baseball, one of the best hitters, period, in all of baseball, is now a San Francisco Giant. And that's all the Giants care about. That's all Buster Posey cares about. And that's all Giants fans care about. And Rafael Devers now has a new home in the Bay Area in San Francisco on a very good baseball team, by the way. Not a team that's one game over 500 like the Red Sox. No, a team that is well over 500 and only 2 games back of the Dodgers. He finds himself on a really good baseball team. So good for the Giants, good for Devers, and for the Red Sox, you know, Bogarts, Mookie, and now Devers. And it is still a shocking move, even though I kind of get why the Red Sox did it. I kind of get why the Red Sox traded Devers. But but man, you're only a half game back of the wild card. You know, man, you're only a half game back of the wild card. You just swept the Yankees. You've won 5 in a row now against the Yankees. You know, I don't know. I don't know. You're a half game back. But I can understand why the Red Sox chose to go and I can understand why the Red Sox traded Devers. I can understand it. I can understand it. And it's a big thing for the National League now. Giants are going for it. And if you're the Mets, hey, that's another team that you look at and go, hey, all right, you're going for it too. So the Mets now, I think, need to look at the Giants and go, okay, maybe we need to make a move like that, coming up. Maybe we need to make a big trade. Like I said, pitcher, bullpen. Um, quick bit on Devers to the Mets. I know there were some Met fans who wanted it, but here's the thing. That would have been another big contract to take it. I know you people say, well, Steve Cohen's got the money. He can take it, Steve Cohen, money, my Steve Cohen. But slow down. But that's another big contract they're taking in with Lindor and Soto's contracts. Plus, Pete Alonso is going to more than likely opt out of his contract, which makes him a free agent. Which makes him a free agent. You might have to give him money. You might have to give him decently large contract. Who knows what's going to happen there? So you would have had to take in a big contract along with the other big contracts, along with a possible another upcoming big contract, and also there's the whole paying for a big money for a DH thing. I know some people have said, well, yeah, would have done for also Soto as well, but I'm not ready to say Juan Soto, is going to be a DH in 5 years. I know that's like the very popular thing for a lot of people to say, oh, Juan Soto will be a DH in 5 years. I mean, he's 26. Can we at least give him like 10 years before they put him at DH instead of 5? And honestly, like I said, Juan Soto has played a good right field so far this year. His right field's been good. It's not great, but it's been good. Certainly not has been as bad as everyone said it was going to be. It's been pretty good this year, right field. So I don't know. I'm not ready to put Juan Soto. I'm not ready to put Juan Soto at DH in 5 years like a lot of other people are. But Yeah, having said that, it would have been another big contract, and Devers would have been a DH with a big contract. I don't think the Mets would do that. And again, you already have Soto's contract, Lindor's contract, Pete Alonso's upcoming contract. And you know what? Can we not give up on Mark Vientos? Can the Mets develop young players? I know the Mets are going for it. I know the Mets are trying to win the World Series, and they've already established that. I know the Mets are trying to do that, and they already established that when they got Juan Soto. But in the middle of that, you need your young players to produce. You need your young guys to produce. You know, you need that. You need Mark Vientos to do well. Mark Vientos had a great year last year. I know he's not off to a good start this year, but when he comes back, you got to give him a chance and let him see if he could, and let him figure it out. This is a sophomore year. Now, last year was his rookie year. You knew this year was not going to be easy for him. Sophomore year, off season, teams are like I've seen people say, "Oh, the Mets should have traded a couple of these guys, and the values were high." Why? Why? Don't you want to develop these young players? Don't you want to make? Don't you want to, to borrow a 1980s term? Catch the rising stars. Don't you want to see the rising stars from this team? Catch the rising stars. To borrow a term from the 80s. You know, David Wright. They didn't just kick out David Wright when he struggled. They didn't just kick out Jose Reyes when he struggled. They didn't just kick out Eduardo Alfonso when he struggled. You know, you got to let your young guys play. You got to let your young guys develop. Brandon Nimmo had his struggles for a couple of years, but they gave him a chance, and he turned out to be a pretty darn good starter. Same goes to Jeff McNeil. Same goes to Pete Alonso. You got to let your guys play and develop. So, yeah, Alvarez has not been good the last 2 years now, but you know what? You got to let him play and figure it out and see if he can. Coach him. Vientos has got off to a tough start this year. When he comes back, coach him up and give him a chance to see if he can duplicate what he did last year because the Mets need that. I don't know about Beatty because I think he's shown you what he is at this point. Hopefully Mauricio can figure things out and show you his potential. Hopefully Acuna can go back to what he was back in April. But they need playing time. They need to figure it out. You need to play your young guys. Trading away or letting Devers play, just to throw out Vientos. I think, I think you need to let Vientos figure this out and let him hit. I think you need to let Vientos figure this out and let him hit. That's just that's my opinion on that. You need to let your young guys play, and you need to let your young guys prosper, especially someone like Mark Vientos, who was so key for you last year and was so big for you in the postseason last year. You knew this season, you know, you knew this season, was going to be an adjustment for him. You know, you knew this season was going to be an adjustment for him. You knew it was. It was going to be an adjustment. So let him adjust. Let him get back and let him adjust. So that's all. That's all. So, so big trade by the Giants. Rafael Devers is now a Giant. And I think now this opens up a lot of possibilities for a lot of teams, especially in the National League next month, especially a team like the Mets. Because, hey, the Giants did it for one reason. They need a bat, but they did it for another reason. They're chasing the Dodgers. And the Dodgers are in their division. And that's every team in the National League. That's every team in the National League. That includes the Mets. They're all chasing the Los Angeles Dodgers. So every team in the National League, from the Giants to the Mets to the Phillies to the Braves to the Cardinals to the Cubs, they all got to make big moves like that if you want to beat the Dodgers. So that's the Giants. They made the first big move of the midseason. We'll see what other teams in the National League try to do as they all try to beat the Dodgers because they know the World Series goes through Tinseltown. It goes through Hollywood. It goes through Chavez Ravine. The World Series in all of baseball, not just the National League, but in all of baseball, National League and the American League. Doesn't go through Queens. It doesn't go through the Bronx. It doesn't go through Chicago, and Wrigleyville. It doesn't go through the Bay Area. It doesn't go through San Diego. It doesn't go through Cleveland or Detroit. It doesn't go through anywhere else. It goes through Chavez Ravine in Los Angeles. So everyone's trying to make the big move to beat them. And the Giants made the first move, to try to beat the Dodgers. So big trade by the Giants. And, and we'll see if there's any other team in the National League that makes a big move. We'll see what the Mets do. Because again, they got some needs. We'll see what the Mets do. Because they got some needs. They got some needs. They need, like I said, starting pitcher, bullpen armor too, and I think they need another bat. So anyway, that will do it for this edition of MazzaOnMets. I will be back for a new episode, new show of MazzaOnMets on, let's see, Thursday night. They play the Braves. So we'll go for, Thursday night they play the Braves. We'll go for Friday morning. Well, Friday morning before they play the Phillies. We'll recap the Braves series and we'll preview the upcoming series, the weekend series with the Philadelphia Phillies, as long as anything else that happens on Mets land this week. For Mazza and Ravens, minicamp begins for the Baltimore Ravens on Tuesday. I'll look to do a show on Thursday, so look for that. So look for a Mazza on Ravens on Thursday after minicamp, and look for a new episode of Mazza on Mets on Friday, recapping the Braves series and recapping the Mets series. Recapping the Philly series, excuse me. So thank you all very much for tuning in and watching. I greatly appreciate it. Give it a like and subscribe and share if you can. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've been your host, Evan Mazza. For Mazza on Mets, we'll see you on Friday, and let's go Mets.